My name is Emma, and on my wedding day my family mocked me for marrying a poor driver. They made jokes under their breath, they smiled for photos with tight lips, and they kept asking me if I was sure. But then, at our reception, my husband, Luke, did something no one in that big shiny ballroom was ready for. He took the microphone, walked off the little stage in his simple suit, and placed it in the hands of a stranger in a navy jacket who had just stepped through the doors. The room went quiet. The stranger set a thin folder on the cake table, looked straight at my parents, and said, "Good evening. My name is..." That was the highest peak. That was the moment that made the glasses stop midair and the DJ's finger freeze above the next song. My mom's smile slipped. My dad's jaw locked. The stranger tapped the folder, the one with colored tabs and the officers by the door. Yes, officers shifted their weight like they were waiting for a cue. Luke found my eyes and gave me a small nod that meant, "I'm here. You're safe." The stranger took a breath to speak, and a drumstick fell from the bandstand and hit the floor like a bell. My father pushed his chair back. He took one step toward the folder. "Now let me tell you how we got there. I met Luke on a hot Tuesday that felt like a Monday. My car had a flat on Route 17, and I was standing by the shoulder with sweat on my neck and tears in my eyes because I was late for a job interview I needed. A rideshare car pulled in behind me with the hazards blinking. A man in a faded baseball cap got out, gentle eyes, soft voice. "You okay?" he asked like he truly wanted to know. "I don't have the right wrench," I said. "I do," he answered, like it was the easiest thing in the world. He knelt on the hot asphalt and changed my tire with careful hands. Then he gave me a cold bottle of water from a cooler in his trunk and said, "I can get you to your interview. No charge." He waited outside in the lot with the windows down, reading an old paperback while I tried to pull myself together inside a bright lobby that smelled like lemon cleaner. When I came back out, he didn't ask for my number. He only asked, "How'd it go?" I told him I thought I blew it. He smiled and said, "Maybe you didn't." Later that day, the manager called to say I got the job. That night, I followed a small pull in my chest and messaged the driver on Instagram, the only contact we'd swapped. We went for cheap tacos because that was all we could afford, and he told me his name was Luke. He drove for a living. School pickups, airport runs, late nights on weekends. "I like the quiet in between," he said. "People start things and end things in my car. I get to be the calm." He kept granola bars in the glove box for a kid who took the late bus. He knew the barista's name, the gas station clerk's name, the old man with the dachshund's name. He parked far away so others could park close. He tied a little boy's loose shoelaces on a curb and taught him the bunny ears knot. He returned shopping carts every single time. I told my sister, Madison, that Luke was the kind of person who made you want to be kinder tomorrow than you were today. My family didn't care about any of that. They cared about resumes and plans and numbers. My mom, Linda, could throw a perfect charity brunch and whisper a cutting line without messing her lipstick. My dad, Mark, managed a chain of furniture stores and loved telling people how many employees he led. When I told them about Luke, my mother looked at my shoes first, like my taste had slipped. "A driver?" she said, the way people say leak. My dad tapped the table. "What's the plan, Emma? Insurance? 401k? Promotions? You can't build a life on tips and gas." "I can build a life on kindness," I said. "And work. And love." Madison made a joke about seat belts and steady income. At Thanksgiving, Mom sat Luke at the kids' table. He didn't complain. He cut turkey for the little ones and showed them how to build a fort out of couch cushions. My aunt whispered, "He's sweet," and my uncle whispered back, "He's broke." When we left, everyone got leftovers except Luke. "We ran out of containers," Mom said. Luke thanked her anyway. For Christmas, my parents gave me a glossy brochure for a networking cruise with a note, "Let's aim higher." Luke gave me a tiny keychain with a star on the back that said, "Keep going." I still keep it in my pocket. When Luke asked me to marry him under a tree that dropped white petals like slow snow, I said yes before he finished the question. We wanted a backyard wedding with lemonade and mismatched chairs, my uncle's band, and a cookie table. My parents wanted a hotel ballroom. Gold chairs, ice sculptures, and a guest list full of the right people. "Let us handle it," Mom said. "We'll pay." She sounded generous. She was building a theater. The whispers grew louder as the date got closer. Someone sent a message from a fake account that said, "This is what your life won't look like," with a photo of stacked cash. One day a card arrived with ransom note letters glued inside. "He's using you." Mom asked for our guest list and crossed out half of Luke's friends from the garage gym. "They don't have suits," she said. "I'll rent them suits," Luke said. "They don't have the right shoes," she said. "I'll polish them," Luke said. She pursed her lips like she had tasted something sour. 2 weeks before the wedding, Dad slid a check across a diner table and told me to end it. "We'll say the venue fell through," he said. "You're young. You can start fresh." "I am starting fresh," I said. "With Luke." I slid the envelope back. That night, in our little kitchen with the buzzing light, I told Luke about the check. He didn't flinch. He poured tea for both of us and said, "I have a plan." "What plan?" I asked. He smiled in that small, steady way of his. "Trust me, our story is bigger than their money." The day came with bright flowers, a dress that felt like me, and a groom who cried when he saw me and didn't hide it. People posted captions like "Love wins," while asking each other at the bar how long it would last. The ballroom was all mirrors and white tablecloths, too much light and not enough warmth. The salad spoons looked like little shells, and the napkins were folded like swans. We danced our first dance, and I pressed my cheek to Luke's and whispered, "We made it." He whispered, "Almost." The toast started. Madison told a story about me mixing up salt and sugar when I was 10. People laughed. Dad told a story about me selling lemonade and making $20 in one afternoon. "She's always known the value of money," he said, staring at Luke like it was a duel. Mom dabbed her eyes at the exact right moments, like a director had given her cues. Then Luke asked for the microphone. He thanked everyone. He thanked Mom for her eye for detail and Dad for his drive, and somehow he meant it without sounding fake. "There's someone special who just arrived," he said. "I'd like to give him a moment." He looked toward the doors. The DJ turned the music down like the whole room leaned in. A man in a navy jacket walked in, silver at the temples, calm face, careful steps. He carried only a slim folder. He had the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to prove he belongs. Luke stepped down and placed the mic in his hand. The man set the folder on the cake table, next to the sugar flowers and the shining knife. He looked straight at my parents, then at me, then at Luke. He did not smile. He did not frown. He breathed in and said, "Good evening. My name is..." That was the cliff's edge. Everyone knew it. Even the DJ knew it because his finger hovered over a button that would be wrong no matter what sound it played. What you don't know is what Luke never bragged about. He had been helping people for years in tiny ways that did not make noise. He paid for a nurse's late-night ride when she forgot her wallet. He left 4 winter hats on a park bench with a note. "Take one if you're cold." He drove a woman named Mrs. Green to bingo every Thursday because she used a walker and didn't like the bus. And one afternoon, months ago, he pulled over for a man holding a cardboard sign that said "Need a ride to the courthouse." Luke took him. Luke listened. Luke made calls. Luke kept receipts. Luke remembered names. And slowly, quietly, without telling me every detail because he wanted me to love him for him and not for the story, Luke helped gather pieces of a truth my parents hoped would stay buried under tablecloths and speeches. I wish I could say I guessed it. I didn't. I only felt the room change, like the air had weight now. The stranger's folder had colored tabs, the kind lawyers use when the story is too big for one page. My mother's fingers dug half moons into her napkin. My father's jaw moved side to side like a man who chews on decisions. Madison leaned close and whispered, "Who is he?" Her perfume smelled like oranges and nerves. "Good evening," the stranger said again, not louder, just steadier. He touched the folder with 2 fingers, like it was a doorbell he was about to press. "We've met," he said to my parents, "years ago." A sound moved through the room, half gasp, half shiver. A glass clinked in the back. Someone's chair creaked. Two uniformed officers, who had slipped in quietly near the doors, shifted their feet and folded their hands in front of them. They didn't reach for anything. They only watched. My dad stood up, slow and stiff. "This is a wedding," he said, carefully, like each word could crack. "If you have something to say, you can say it another day." The stranger's eyes did not leave my father's face. "Another day already came and went," he said. "Tonight, we use the microphone you taught everyone to fear." The DJ swallowed. The photographer raised her camera, then lowered it again like she knew a flash would be wrong. Luke slid his hand into mine under the tablecloth. His palm was warm. His pulse was steady. "I'm here," he whispered. The stranger opened the folder. Tabs in yellow, blue, and red. He lifted the first page and angled it toward the light. I couldn't read the title from where I sat, but I didn't have to. I saw what it did to my father's face, the way the color drained, the way his breath left him like the last air in a balloon. My mom reached for his sleeve and missed. A symbol on the bandstand trembled from a nervous elbow. The cake knife, polished and pretty, slid an inch on the silver stand. The stranger lifted the microphone. 10 years ago. The knife slipped fully, clattered to the floor like a warning bell, and everyone's had turned for a heartbeat. In that heartbeat, my father moved. He lunged toward the cake table, his hand aiming for the folder, for the past, for anything he could grab and hide. The nearest officer stepped fast and placed his shoe on the edge of the folder, pinning it to the table without crushing the papers. "Sir," the officer said, even and calm. "Step back." Chairs scraped. Someone gasped so loud it sounded like a sob. My mother stood, then sat, then stood again like she didn't know how to be a person in this new air. The stranger didn't flinch. He kept the microphone close. He looked at me once, and I saw no hunger for drama in his eyes, only a sad kind of mercy. He turned back to my parents. "Tonight," he said, "you will hear the beginning of a truth you tried to end." And right then, just as he began to speak the first name on the first page, the ballroom doors opened again with a soft hush of air. A tall woman with gray streaks in her hair stepped in, wearing a plain dress that did not match the glitter of the room. She stopped 3 steps inside and lifted her chin. Her eyes met my mother's, and something like fear shot through my mother's face, so fast it made me dizzy. "Linda," the woman said, voice steady but shaking at the edges. "Do you remember me?" My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father didn't turn around. He stared at the folder like a man staring at a locked door while the key skittered away. The stranger nodded once to the woman and lowered the microphone so she could take it if she wanted. She reached out, fingers trembling, but she didn't take it yet. She looked at me instead, and her eyes were full of years I did not know about. "I'm sorry you have to hear this today," she said softly, "but I think you needed to hear it here." My heart pounded. Luke's thumb moved once over my knuckles like a small anchor on a storm map. The band leader picked up his drumstick again and froze midair. The officers did not move. The room felt like a held breath. And then, before the woman could speak her next word, a second figure stepped through the doors behind her. A young man in a wrinkled shirt, clutching a folded paper that looked like it had been smoothed and crumpled 100 times. He looked past everyone and found my father like a homing device. The folded paper shook in his hand. The stranger lifted the microphone back to his mouth. "We will proceed in order," he said. "There is enough time for every voice." My father took another step, just a small one, like he still believed he could stop the tide with his shoes. The officer's voice stayed even. "Sir, back. Now." The music was gone. The laughter was gone. The fake warmth of the room had drained away, and something raw and real had taken its place. Betrayal stood beside heartbreak and stared at revenge, and for the first time in my life, I believed that kindness might still win, but not the pretty kind you tie with ribbon. The hard kind. The kind that tells the truth in a bright room while the people who used to control the microphone are forced to listen. The stranger turned the first page, so the title line faced the lights. The young man with the wrinkled shirt sucked in a breath. My mother whispered, "Mark, like a prayer and a warning at the same time. Luke's hand squeezed mine, and the ballroom, all at once, was a match waiting for a spark. The stranger lifted the microphone, eyes steady on my parents.
Good evening.
My name is Michael Reyes. I'm a special investigator with the state attorney's office. The room shivered. Earlier today, a sealed packet became unsealed. I am here to read it. He tapped the folder. These are findings from a 3-year inquiry into the Thompson Community Homes Initiative. My father's jaw jumped. My mother's hand went to her pearls. The 2 officers by the door didn't move, but every guest did. Some leaned forward, some shrank, some reached for water they didn't drink. Within this folder, Michael said, are contracts, bank transfers, and emails showing that funds meant for affordable housing were redirected to private accounts and shell companies. Names are here. Dates are here. Signatures are here. He turned one page. And at the center of those signatures are Mark and Linda Thompson. Gasps broke like glass. That was the highest peak. That was the hit that made my parents tremble so hard my mother's chair squeaked against the floor. Michael lifted a second page, and the projector behind the DJ flickered to life. My father's signature, huge and bright, hanging above the wedding cake like an extra chandelier. I'm going to read a statement, Michael said. And just as he drew breath, the ballroom lights blinked once, as if the truth itself strained the wires. The DJ flinched. The room held still, waiting for the next crack to open. Now let me tell you how we reached this edge. Months before the wedding, before flowers, before fittings, Luke kept a schedule that looked simple. Rides to the airport, school pickups, late-night shifts. But inside those ordinary lines were small, quiet stops, a courthouse door, a community clinic, a church basement where people signed their names on a clipboard and took turns telling stories no one had allowed them to finish. Luke never came home and bragged. He came home with soft eyes and tired hands and said things like, I met a woman who needs a heater before the cold, or there's a kid who lost his backpack again, or people remember when you show up twice. One afternoon, he texted me, running late, driving someone who needs to be heard. When he came home, he had that look he gets when he's carrying someone else's pain. I made tea. He wrapped his hands around the mug and kept his voice low. Emma, I have to ask a hard thing, he said. Can we invite a few people to the wedding who don't wear suits? People who don't know our families but know the truth. Yes, I said, heart already pounding. Yes. He kissed my forehead. Thank you, he whispered. It matters. It mattered because 2 years earlier, he had met a woman named Rachel in his backseat. She had a folder that looked like her whole life was inside it. She spoke with a flat, careful voice, like every word had to pass a test. She told Luke about deposits paid and houses not built, about a winter in a car, about a child who never warmed up again. Luke listened. He wrote down names she remembered and names she didn't. He drove her to a legal aid office the next morning and waited in the parking lot with the meter paid up for 3 hours. When she came out, she had a number to call and someone willing to look at the papers in her lap. This is bigger than me, she said to Luke, voice small in the afternoon light. It's not bigger than us, Luke said. We'll make it ours.
He meant it.
He began collecting little bricks of truth. A contract copy here, a receipt there, a text saved, a voicemail transcribed, a date circled in red. He kept names straight. He showed up twice. He never asked for credit. He called himself a driver because he drove people where they needed to go, even when the road bent toward a bright room with gold chairs and a microphone. When I said yes to his proposal under that tree with white petals, I did not know the whole plan. I didn't know he was also saying yes to a promise he'd made in a car on a rainy morning. I will not let your voice die in paperwork. He kept that promise like he kept everything, with quiet, patient work that looked like humility and felt like love. Back in the ballroom, people thought the worst thing that could happen at a wedding was a drunk uncle or a wilted bouquet. Now, the worst thing was arriving on a screen, clean font, black ink, neat lines. Michael turned another page, and my father's initials glowed as if the projector burned them in. Mr. Thompson, Michael said, still calm, you will have the chance to speak under oath. Tonight, you will have the chance to listen. He flipped to a tab marked with a blue strip. But first, there is someone here who has earned the microphone. He looked toward the doors. Rachel stepped in. Her dress was simple. Her hands shook a little, but her back was straight, and when she looked at my mother, her eyes were not cruel. They were injured and brave. She took the microphone like it weighed as much as her memories. "My name is Rachel Carter," she said. 10 years ago, I paid a deposit to the Thompson Community Homes Initiative. I was told keys would come before winter." She swallowed. Winter came anyway. We slept in our car, me and my 2 kids.
My son got sick.
I begged for our money back. Mrs. Thompson told me, "Maybe if you married better, you wouldn't be in this mess." A dozen people flinched like they'd been slapped. My mother's lips parted, and a sound came out that wasn't a word. Rachel went on, voice growing steady. "I buried my boy before his 8th birthday. He never saw the house you promised." Silence spread, heavy and holy. Someone sobbed into a napkin. Someone else whispered, "Oh, God." Even the DJ looked down as if the floor needed comfort. I stared at Luke. He did not look at the screen or at my parents or at the officers. He looked at me, steady and warm and present. I married a driver, I thought, and he steered pain toward the light. The low that followed was quiet but sharp. People shifted in their seats. The servers stood still with trays of sparkling water that no one took. My sister pressed her napkin to her eyes. "I didn't know," she whispered, like it could be a shield. I believed her. Not knowing isn't innocence, but sometimes it's the first step toward it. Michael nodded to Rachel with real respect and took the microphone back.
"Thank you," he said.
He set a red-tabbed page on the cake table, then lifted another. "We have an accounting of diverted funds, totaling." He paused, eyes on my father. "We'll read that in full later." He looked toward the doors again. "Next is Daniel." The young man in the wrinkled shirt came forward. He held a paper that had been folded and unfolded so many times the creases looked like roads. "I'm Daniel Collins," he said. "When the project fell through, we lost our apartment. My mom got sick. She didn't make it." He held up the paper with shaking hands. "This is our last eviction notice. The date on it is the same week your company moved money into he glanced at Michael, who nodded, "into an account with your name on it." The projector changed again, dates, amounts, a line marching from one column to another like a quiet crime walking across a page. My father's chest rose and fell hard. My mother's hands were 2 small fists on her lap. The officers still did not move. The air in the room felt different, cleaner, somehow, like a storm had cracked the pressure and let us breathe truth. I thought about kindness. Not the pretty kind with bows, but the useful kind with calluses.
Kindness had built this moment.
Revenge was here, yes, but it did not look like shouting. It looked like a microphone passed from one honest hand to another. Luke squeezed my hand under the table. "I'm sorry," he whispered, for all the pain in the room he did not cause but had helped carry. "And I'm proud of you," I whispered back, for all the courage he brought here without asking to be seen. Then the room tilted again, another high, rising like a wave. A new image replaced the bank transfers, a screen recording of an email thread. The subject line was the project's name. The sender was a consultant. The recipient was my mother. The words were dry until one line that burned: "We can push Phase 2 funds forward if the press event is strong. Photos with families will help." Below it, my mother had typed, "Schedule a ribbon cutting with mock floor plans if needed." Heads turned like a flock. My mother flinched. "Those emails are out of context," she rasped. It was the first time she'd spoken since her name hung on the screen. Michael's voice stayed level. "Context will come," he said, under oath. My father stood, almost knocking his chair over. "Turn that off," he barked. "This is my daughter's wedding. It's my life," I said, surprising myself. My voice didn't shake. "And those lives," I added, nodding toward Rachel and Daniel, "are part of it." The room breathed, some with me, some against me. But Luke's hand in mine felt like a small, bright engine. Michael lifted the folder again. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, you will receive formal notice shortly. Tonight, There is one more piece that belongs here now. He pulled a thin envelope from the back and set it by the cake knife. A letter written by a man who couldn't be here. He was on the original list for a home. He died last spring. Michael's voice softened. He asked that his words be read in any room where the truth was told. He glanced at me. May I? I nodded. The room nodded with me. Michael opened the envelope. Dear people in the nice room, he read, I hope you are comfortable. I am writing from a place that was not comfortable. I am dead now, but before I died, I wanted to say that people who take money from the poor are not strong. They are afraid. They are afraid they will be small if they don't step on someone. I hope the smallness stops with you. I hope someone will be kind out loud. The letter ended there. No curse, no list of demands. Just a hope, handwritten. The simplest words in the room knocked the wind out of me. A soft, low beat followed. No one clapped, thank God.
We weren't at a show.
We were in a reckoning. And then the next extreme event came with footsteps. Two more figures stepped through the doors, a woman in a navy skirt suit and a man with a leather briefcase. They moved with a quiet purpose that made the space between tables feel narrow. Michael stepped to the side and lowered the microphone as the woman reached the cake table. She placed a square, official-looking envelope beside the folder and the knife. Mark and Linda Thompson, she said, voice clear, I'm Assistant Attorney General Nora Blake. These are formal notices of asset preservation and records hold. Effective immediately. All transfers are frozen, pending court review. My mother's breath hitched. My father reached out as if to snatch the envelope, then thought better of touching anything with a seal on it. People in the room whispered words like frozen, hold, court, as if tasting them could make them smaller. Nora went on, you are not under arrest at this time. A collective exhale rose, short and sharp. But you are required to remain available for questioning. Attempts to destroy or conceal records will be treated as criminal. My father laughed once, the kind of laugh a man uses instead of crying. You come to my daughter's reception for this? He asked. You embarrass my family here? Nora did not blink. Sir, the timing is not about embarrassment. It is about service and safety. These notices must be delivered where you are and the evidence needed protection. She glanced at the officers, then at the folder, then at the screen. And the people you took from deserve to see this delivered. That was the hit. People who had worked for my father, people who had smiled at my mother's brunches, people who ate their salads with tiny shell spoons. Some dropped their eyes, some looked at me with something like apology, and some looked at my parents like a mirror had finally been held up. The low that followed was human and small. Madison stood and came to my side. She didn't defend our parents. She pressed her forehead to mine for a second and whispered, I'm sorry. I believed her again. It didn't fix harm. It started a path. Luke leaned close. Do you need air? He asked. I need truth, I said. And then I'll need air. Michael Reyes lifted the mic once more. We're going to pause the reading of figures, he said. The next pages name specific checks and accounts. They will be handled in court. He glanced toward the band, the DJ, the guests. For now, we'll hear two final statements from those affected, and then we will step aside so the family can decide how to proceed with the event. He meant the event like a thing that could keep going, but everyone knew the party had stood on a floor that wasn't there. He gestured toward the back. A nurse in scrubs stepped forward, her hair in a bun, her badge clipped to her pocket. I'm Kara, she said. I worked nights. Your project promised my mom a place near my hospital, so I could check on her. We never got it. She fell at the shelter. I was on shift. I couldn't leave. She swallowed. This isn't about money. It's about a key on a hook that never hung. People dabbed their eyes. The server finally set a tray down. Michael nodded to Kara and then to the young man who had entered after Rachel. One more, he said. Then we will clear the aisle. The young man stepped up again, hands steady now. My name is Aaron Price, he said. I'm here for my grandmother. She saved for years. She cut coupons. She trusted a smiling brochure with your name on it. He looked straight at my mother. She trusted you. He pulled a small photograph from his pocket and held it near the projector. The DJ, quick and gentle, angled a camera so the photo filled the screen. An old woman sitting on a folding chair outside a storage unit, a little plant at her feet in a cracked pot, smiling at whoever was behind the lens like love itself was there. "That's the day we moved her things," Aaron said. "We told her it was temporary. She believed us. She died waiting." He lowered the photo. "I brought this so you would see her face. I didn't bring blame for your daughter. I brought truth for you." The quiet in the room felt like a prayer that no one had planned, the kind that happens when grief and honesty share a table. Then came the new extreme, the one that would carry us straight into the next chapter. My father, red-faced and shaking, grabbed his champagne glass and slammed it with a spoon until the sound pierced the hush. "Enough," he shouted, voice cracking. "This circus is over." He looked at me, wild-eyed. "Emma, tell them to leave. Tell your husband to hand back the microphone. Tell these people to get out of here." He hurled the glass toward the floor. It shattered. Guests screamed. The officers moved at once, hands open, bodies between my father and the table. The projector blinked, as if even it flinched. My mother reached for my father's sleeve and missed. And in that chaos, my father did the unthinkable. He lunged, not for the folder this time, but for Luke. The room surged to its feet. The ballroom cracked open like a storm. My father's body lurched across the aisle, his hands clawing for Luke's collar. Guests screamed, chairs scraped. The DJ ducked behind his booth. The champagne glass shards still glittered on the marble floor when my father's shadow fell across my husband. He kissed my forehead. A man who made promises to the wrong people. He's going to make it right. That was the low, the quiet moment I didn't understand until now. Back in the ballroom, the chaos swelled again. Guests whispered furiously, some pulling out their phones, others covering their mouths. Madison gripped my arm, whispering, "Emma, this is insane. This is our family." I shook my head, my voice low but firm. "This isn't our family. This is the mask they wore." Michael Reyes stepped forward again, reclaiming the microphone. "For the record," he said, "Councilman Hale's testimony is now part of the file. What happens next is not for this ballroom to decide. It is for the court." He tapped the folder. "But before we close tonight's reading, there is one last statement to be heard." He gestured toward the back doors. And in walked a boy no older than 17, holding a battered guitar case. His hair was messy, his shoes worn. But his eyes were sharp, alive, burning with something bigger than fear. He walked past the tables, straight to the stage, and for a moment no one spoke. He set the guitar case down, opened it, and pulled out not a guitar, but a stack of photographs bound with twine. "I'm Matthew," he said. His voice cracked with youth, but it carried. "My dad was one of the workers hired to build those houses. He never got paid. He came home every night, hands bleeding, stomach empty. He kept saying, 'Once the houses are done, we'll be okay.' But the houses never got done. And last year, he gave up." Matthew's lip trembled. He gave up forever. He untied the twine and held up the first photograph, a smiling man in a construction vest, holding Matthew on his shoulders. He lifted another, a half-built foundation, weeds curling through the cracks. Another, his father's grave, flowers wilting. The ballroom was still, so still I could hear the hum of the projector and the faint buzz of the chandelier lights. And then Matthew looked at me, straight at me. "Mrs. Emma," he said softly, "your husband promised me my dad's story would be heard. Tonight, he kept that promise." Tears blurred my eyes. My chest ached. Luke's hand was still in mine, steady, solid, strong. That was the low again, raw and human. But just as the room softened into grief, the next extreme struck like thunder. One of the officers by the door pressed a hand to his radio. His eyes went sharp. He leaned in close to Michael Reyes and whispered something. Michael's face hardened. He lifted the microphone one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I've just been informed that a warrant has been signed. Officers," he nodded toward the men in uniform, "you may proceed." Gasps. Screams. chairs scraping. The officers moved toward my parents. The ballroom erupted into chaos the moment Michael Reyes spoke the word warrant. Guests gasped, some leapt to their feet, others pressed hands over their mouths. My mother's sharp scream cut through the noise. No, not here. She clutched her pearls so tightly I thought they would snap. My father froze, his eyes darting between the officers and the doors like a trapped animal searching for an exit. That was the highest peak. Warrants read aloud at what was supposed to be my happiest day. The officers stepped forward, their voices even but unshakable. Mark Thompson. Linda Thompson. You are hereby served under an active warrant. You are required to come with us immediately. The crowd broke into two halves, one half buzzing with shock, the other half silent as stone. The projector behind the DJ glowed faintly, still showing my father's signature, as if the room itself refused to let him hide. My mother clung to my father's arm. Do something, she hissed. Her mascara streaked, her perfect hair falling loose. She looked nothing like the polished hostess who had walked in earlier. My father's chest rose and fell hard. He raised his chin and barked, "This is a wedding. You can't humiliate us like this in front of everyone." Officer Ramirez, the taller of the two, didn't blink. "Sir, the warrant is valid. You are coming with us." My father shook his head, his voice breaking. "Emma," his eyes snapped to me, wild and pleading. "Tell them to stop. Tell them it's a mistake. I'm your father." I opened my mouth, but no words came. Luke's hand pressed against mine, grounding me. He didn't speak for me. He let me choose.
And I chose silence.
That silence was my answer. My father's face crumpled. My mother sobbed openly now, clinging tighter, but the officers moved closer, calm and firm. That was when the low came, the human desperation. My mother dropped to her knees right there on the ballroom floor. Her voice cracked, raw, ugly. "Please." Not in front of her. Not in front of my daughter. Not today. Her tears splattered on the marble. "Please, not today." The entire room shifted. People whispered. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Some shook their heads. Some pitied her. But no one stood up to stop the officers. Not a single guest. And then the next extreme slammed down like thunder. Michael Reyes lifted the microphone, his voice sharp now. "Mrs. Thompson, this isn't about your daughter. This is about the dozens of families you ruined." He pointed toward Rachel, Daniel, Kara, and Matthew, who still stood near the cake table. "Your daughter's wedding isn't ruined because of us. It's ruined because of you." The crowd gasped. My mother's sobs turned into a low, animal-like wail. My father shouted, "You don't know what you're talking about," and tried to wrench free. The officers locked his wrists in cuffs. The metallic click echoed louder than any champagne glass. My father flinched at the sound like it was a gunshot. My mother's scream rose higher, breaking into a sob as her wrists were bound too. Guests pulled out phones. Flashes popped. My parents' faces twisted in pain and fury as their images were captured. Not for magazines, not for charity galas, but for the truth. I sat frozen, heart pounding, watching the two people who raised me dragged toward the doors. I expected to feel only shame, only loss. But I felt something else too, relief. Relief that the weight of their lies wasn't mine to carry anymore. Luke leaned close, whispering into my ear, "You're free now." And yet the night wasn't over. Because just as the officers reached the door with my parents, Michael raised his hand. "Wait." His voice was calm, but it sliced the air clean. The officers paused. The crowd stilled again. Michael lifted the final page from his folder. "There is one last name in these records," he said. His eyes swept the room, then landed on someone I hadn't noticed before, an older man in the back row, sitting very still. "And that name belongs to someone here." Gasps rose again. My father twisted in his cuffs, his eyes wide. My mother's head snapped up. The older man shifted in his seat, sweat glistening on his forehead. Michael read the name aloud, and the entire ballroom erupted into fresh chaos. Michael Reyes's voice boomed over the microphone, steady as a hammer striking steel. The final name listed in these records is Councilman Richard Hale. The crowd exploded. Gasps, shouts, whispers, all colliding at once like a storm tearing through the ballroom. Chairs scraped. Silverware rattled. Some guests stood so quickly their glasses toppled. Councilman Hale, the very man who had walked in earlier and confessed, went white as paper. Sweat shone on his forehead. His lips moved, but no words came. That was the highest peak. Everyone thought the Thompson family had taken the fall alone. But now, another powerful name was being dragged into the light. My mother's sobbing halted. Her mascara-streaked face snapped toward Hale with sudden, desperate hope. "You see," she cried, her voice ragged. "We weren't alone. He was in it too. He signed everything with us." My father twisted in his cuffs, his face red and furious. "If I go down, you're going down too, Hale," he shouted, spit flying. "Don't act like you're clean. You made money off this." The room became a boiling cauldron of voices. "I knew it," someone muttered. They were all in it together. Phones went up, recording everything, broadcasting truth faster than any news outlet could. Councilman Hale rose shakily to his feet. His voice trembled. "Yes, I signed. Yes, I knew. But I came here tonight to confess. I gave Luke the evidence." He turned toward the crowd, his hands raised like he was begging. "I'm not running. I'm not fighting. I'm ready to face it." For a moment, the room hesitated. Some people nodded slightly, whispering, "At least he admitted it." Others glared with cold fury. Michael's voice sliced through again. "Councilman Hale, you are now under warrant as well." The officers turned, moving toward him. Hale didn't resist. He lowered his hands slowly, like a man surrendering to the weight of his sins. The metallic click of another pair of cuffs filled the air. That was the moment the ballroom tipped from shock into disbelief. 3 prominent names, my father, my mother, and a city councilman, were all being led out of my wedding in chains. And yet, the low that followed wasn't chaos. It was silence. A heavy, eerie silence. The kind that presses on your chest, demanding you feel it. I sat at the head table, my hands trembling in Luke's. My eyes blurred with tears I didn't know I had left. How could they? I whispered. Luke leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. Because greed blinds people, but truth finds them anyway. His words steadied me, but inside, my heart ached. I thought about Christmas mornings, about birthdays, about my parents teaching me how to ride a bike, about the way my mom used to braid my hair. Were all those moments lies too? Or were they pieces of people who let greed eat them alive? Madison slid her chair closer, her hand finding mine. Her eyes were wet, but not from shame, from sorrow. "Emma," she whispered, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I squeezed her hand. "I believe you." That was the low, sisters clinging to each other in the ruins of a family name. But the night wasn't finished with us. Because as the officers escorted my parents and Hale toward the doors, another figure stepped forward. Rachel Carter, the woman who had lost her son, lifted her chin. Her voice carried, steady despite the tremble in her hands. "Before they leave, I want them to hear one last thing." The officers paused. The entire room turned. Rachel's eyes blazed with the fire of 10 years of silence. "You told me I was nothing," she said to my parents. "You told me to marry better. You laughed at me while I begged. But tonight," she turned to Luke, "tonight, a driver gave me back my voice. And every poor soul you mocked now stands taller than you." The guests roared. Cheers, applause, stomps against the marble. It was raw, it was messy, but it was real. Luke didn't smile. He didn't puff up his chest. He just bowed his head slightly, acknowledging Rachel's words like a man receiving a sacred trust. My parents sagged in their cuffs. My mother's face crumpled. My father's eyes darted around, but there was no escape left. Councilman Hale stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped. And just when it seemed the night had reached its final blow, the next extreme arrived. Michael lifted the microphone one last time. His face was grave, his tone sharp. There will be indictments. There will be trials. But tonight, let this moment be remembered for what it is. He turned toward Luke. Justice didn't begin in an office. It began with a driver who listened. The crowd erupted again, louder than before.
Luke.
Luke, some chanted, pounding tables with their fists. Others shouted, hero. The ballroom that once mocked him now cheered his name. My heart swelled and broke at the same time. My husband, the man my family called poor, the man they mocked, had turned the spotlight on truth, not on himself. And now the world was seeing him for who he really was. The officers pulled open the ballroom doors. My parents were let out first, then Hale. The cameras followed, the whispers chased, the truth lingered like smoke. I sat there, stunned, breathless, clutching Luke's hand as if it were the only anchor in the storm. But deep down I knew this wasn't the end. The scandal was only beginning. The trials would drag on for months. Secrets might still spill. And my family's name would never be the same. Yet for the first time in years, I felt free. The ballroom was still buzzing when Michael Reyes closed the folder and placed it in Luke's hands. His voice was low but firm. This belongs to you now. Guard it well. Luke nodded. I will. And the guests, slowly but surely, turned their eyes back to us, not with pity, not with scorn, but with something like respect. That was the low, the quiet after the storm, the breath before whatever comes next. But then, just as I thought the night might finally ease, one of the servers, a young woman who had been silent all evening, stepped up to the microphone. Her voice shook, but it carried. My name is Clara, she said, and I have something to add. The ballroom froze. The ballroom, already heavy with shock, fell into a new kind of silence when the young server stepped up to the microphone. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the stand, the tray she'd been carrying abandoned on a nearby table. Glasses rattled where she'd set it down too quickly. Every eye turned toward her. My name is Clara, she said, her voice small at first, but growing with each word. I wasn't supposed to speak tonight. I wasn't even supposed to be part of this story. But I can't keep quiet anymore. That was the highest peak, the moment when a voice no one expected suddenly demanded to be heard. My mother, still standing near the doorway in cuffs, froze mid-sob. My father turned his head sharply, confusion breaking through his fury. Even Councilman Hale, slouched and resigned, lifted his gaze toward the trembling girl. Clara took a deep breath. I used to work for the Thompsons. Not as a server at events like this, inside their house. I cleaned. I cooked. I organized papers they told me not to look at. Her hands clenched around the microphone. But I looked. Gasp spread again. My chest tightened. Luke's hand found mine under the table, grounding me the way he always did. Clara's voice shook, but she pushed on. I saw checks. I saw receipts. I even saw envelopes of cash being stuffed into drawers. And when I asked questions, just little ones, they told me I was lucky to have a job and that I should learn to keep my mouth shut. Her throat tightened. I was lucky, because when I refused to sign a paper saying I hadn't seen anything, they fired me. And they told everyone in town not to hire me again. The crowd murmured, shocked, disgusted. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came. My father spat, she's lying, but it was weak, hollow. Clara shook her head fiercely. I'm not lying. I struggled for years because of them. I scrubbed floors at night, begged for tips, even slept in my car once. And all the while I kept copies. Papers I wasn't supposed to have. Proof. Her last word hit like a lightning strike. The crowd gasped. Michael Reyes's eyes sharpened. He stepped forward, voice calm but urgent. Clara, do you have those copies now? Clara reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a thin, weathered envelope. I've carried them for years, she whispered, hoping someone would believe me. Michael took the envelope carefully, as though it contained glass. He slid the papers out and glanced through them quickly, his face hardening with each sheet. Then he lifted them toward the projector. Words, signatures, numbers, more pieces of the puzzle my parents thought they had buried, flashed across the screen. The ballroom erupted again. Some guests shouted. Others wept. A few simply sat in stunned silence, unable to process it all. That was the low that followed, because while the papers proved the depth of betrayal, they also deepened the heartbreak. Every new page was another nail in the coffin of the people who raised me. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt heavy, like all the air had been sucked out of the room. "Luke," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Why does it feel like it just keeps getting worse?" He turned to me, his eyes steady, his voice calm. "Because truth doesn't come in one wave, Emma. It comes in many. And sometimes, the last wave is the one that breaks the shore." The crowd buzzed with anger and disbelief. My parents sagged in their cuffs, pale and defeated. Councilman Hale closed his eyes, shaking his head slowly. And then the next extreme hit, sudden and sharp. Michael Reyes lifted the microphone, his voice firm. "With Clara's evidence added to the file, the case against the Thompsons and their associates is airtight. And given the new material, I am authorized to inform this room." He paused, the weight of his words sinking in. "That the indictment will be expanded. More names will be added. More arrests will follow." The crowd roared. Some cheered, others gasped. A woman in the back shouted, "Justice." The word caught like fire, spreading through whispers, then shouts, then chants. "Justice. Justice. Justice." The sound filled the ballroom, shaking the chandeliers, echoing against the walls. My parents shrank in their cuffs. My mother's tears streaked down her cheeks. My father's shoulders sagged, the last of his defiance crumbling. And in the middle of it all, Luke stood calm and steady, my hand in his, the man they mocked as a poor driver, now the center of a storm he had quietly built. Michael Reyes closed the folder at last. He looked at the crowd, then at Luke. Tonight, the truth came out. Let it be remembered, not as the night a family fell, but the night justice stood up in a ballroom. The chants grew louder. "Justice. Justice." I looked at Luke, my heart overflowing with love, pride, and sorrow all at once. He leaned down and whispered, "It's over now." But deep inside, I knew it wasn't over. The trials, the headlines, the shame, they were just beginning. My life would never be the same. My family's name would never be the same. And yet, maybe that was the point. Because the truth had been spoken, the lie shattered, and the voices once silenced had been heard. That was the ending, messy, painful, but real. And as the chants of justice shook the walls of the ballroom, I realized something I would carry forever. Kindness had driven us here. And kindness, loud, relentless, and brave, was the real revenge.